The last thing my mother ever asked me to do was something I had spent my entire life refusing to do. She looked at me from her hospital bed, barely able to keep her eyes open, and whispered, "Your father didn't abandon us, Daniel." I made sure you believed he did. I remember laughing. Not because it was funny. Because I thought the medication was making her confused. My father had been dead for almost 28 years. And according to everything my mother had ever told me, he had walked out on us when I was 6 years old and never looked back. But that night, with her hand trembling inside mine, she said something that made my entire childhood suddenly feel like a carefully constructed lie. Then she gave me an address. An address I recognized. And when I went there 3 days after her funeral, an elderly man opened the door and looked at me for several seconds before saying, "You look exactly like your mother did when she was your age." That was when I realized my mother's secret wasn't about my father simply leaving. It was about why he left. And why she never wanted me to find him. My name is Daniel. I'm 42 years old, and for most of my life, I thought I understood my family. It wasn't perfect. But I thought I knew the important parts. My mother, Margaret, raised me alone. My father, Thomas, left when I was 6. My mother worked 2 jobs for several years to keep food on the table. We lived in a small brick house outside Columbus, Ohio, and money was always tight. There were no vacations. No expensive Christmas presents. No family photographs with 3 people smiling together. Just my mother and me. And whenever I asked about my father, she gave me the same answer. He made his choice. That sentence became part of my childhood. I heard it when I was 8. I heard it when I was 12. I heard it when I was 16 and angry enough to demand the truth. He made his choice, Daniel. I eventually stopped asking. By the time I was 20, I had convinced myself that I didn't care. But that wasn't true. I cared. I just didn't want to admit it. Every Father's Day, I'd see other people posting pictures with their dads. Fishing trips. Graduations. Weddings. Birthdays. And I'd tell myself I was lucky. At least my mother stayed. She was everything to me. She was my parent, my protector, my biggest supporter. So when she told me my father had chosen another life over us, I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was my mother. The first strange thing happened when I was 17. I came home early from school one afternoon and found her sitting at the kitchen table with an old photograph. She immediately turned it face down. I asked what it was. Nothing. I laughed. You're terrible at lying. She didn't smile. She put the photograph inside a drawer and locked it. I'd never seen her lock that drawer before. Mom, what's in there? Things that don't concern you. That answer bothered me for years. But I respected her privacy. At least, I thought I did. Then, when I was 29, my mother developed a habit of receiving phone calls she wouldn't discuss. She'd step outside. Sometimes she'd stay gone for 10 minutes. Sometimes 20. Whenever I asked, she'd say it was nothing. I assumed it was financial trouble. Maybe an old friend. Maybe someone from work. I never imagined it was connected to my father. Because, as far as I knew, my father was long gone. My mother got sick when she was 68. At first, it was manageable. Then it wasn't. The doctors discovered the cancer had spread. Within months, she went from walking around the house and complaining about the television remote to barely being able to sit upright. I moved into her house. I took time off work. I cooked her meals. I slept on the couch. And during those final weeks, we talked about everything except the one subject we'd avoided our entire lives. My father. Until that Thursday night. It was raining. I remember that because the window beside her bed was covered with tiny drops of water. She called my name. Daniel. I looked up from my phone. Yeah? Sit closer. I moved my chair beside her. She reached for my hand. Her fingers were cold. I need to tell you something. I smiled. You don't have to talk tonight. No. Her voice was weak, but there was something different about it. Urgency. I waited too long. For what? She looked at me. Then she said those words. Your father didn't abandon you. I froze. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said, Mom, we don't need to do this. I do. He's been gone for years. He's alive. I felt the room become strangely quiet. What? He's alive, Daniel. I stood up. My chair scraped against the floor. No. He never left because he stopped loving you. Then why did he leave? My mother closed her eyes. And when she opened them again, tears were running down her cheeks. Because I told him to. I wish I could tell you I reacted with compassion. I didn't. I was angry. Furious. I asked her why she had lied to me for 30 years. She tried to explain. I interrupted her. I told her she had stolen something from me. A childhood. A relationship. A chance to know my own father. She cried quietly. Then she said something that stopped me. I thought I was saving you. I didn't understand. She told me that when I was 6, my father had been offered a job several states away. He wanted to take us with him. But my mother refused. At the time, she was caring for her own mother, who was seriously ill. She didn't want to leave. My father offered to stay. They argued constantly. Eventually, my mother told him that if he stayed, they'd destroy each other. So he left. But apparently, he didn't simply disappear. He wrote. He called. He sent birthday cards. He sent money. And my mother intercepted all of it. I stared at her. You never gave me anything? She shook her head. I couldn't. Why? Because I was afraid. Afraid of what? She swallowed. That you'd choose him. She explained that after my father left, she convinced herself she was protecting me from instability. She told him not to contact me. She said I needed consistency. She said if he truly loved me, he'd respect her wishes. But according to her, he didn't stop trying. 4 years. Then eventually, he did. Not because he stopped caring. Because he believed she wanted him gone. I felt sick. Where is he? My mother reached toward the bedside table. There was a small envelope underneath a book. She handed it to me. Inside was a folded piece of paper. An address. And a name. Thomas Carter. My father. I stared at the address. Why are you telling me now? She looked away. Because I'm dying. I didn't know what to say. She continued. I wanted to take this secret with me. Then why didn't you? Because yesterday I realized something. What? She squeezed my hand. I spent 30 years protecting you from a pain that wasn't mine to choose for you. She died 2 days later. Quietly. I was beside her. There was no dramatic final speech. No movie-like goodbye. She simply fell asleep while I was holding her hand. And somehow, that made everything harder. Because I was angry at her. And I loved her. Both things were true. At her funeral, I didn't tell anyone what she'd confessed. I couldn't. It felt too complicated. Too raw. But 3 days later, I drove to the address. It was a modest house in a quiet neighborhood. I sat in my car for almost 20 minutes. I nearly left. Then I knocked. An older man answered. He was thinner than I expected. Gray hair. Glasses. A faded blue sweater. He looked at me. And his expression changed. He didn't ask who I was. He just stared. Then he whispered, "Daniel?" My knees almost gave out. "How do you know?" He smiled sadly. "Because I've been waiting for you for 30 years. We sat in his living room. For the first 10 minutes, neither of us knew what to say. Finally, he asked about my life. I told him. My job. My marriage. My children. He listened to every detail. Then he asked something that broke me. "Did she ever tell you I wrote?" I nodded. "Not until she was dying." He looked down. "I wrote you every birthday." "I know." "I sent photographs." "I know." "I even bought you a bicycle when you turned 10. I stared at him. "I never got one." His eyes filled with tears. "I know." Then he walked to a cabinet. He opened a box. Inside were dozens of envelopes. Some were yellowed with age. Some had faded stamps. Some had my name written across them. Daniel. My name. Written in my father's handwriting. He had kept them. Every single one. We spent almost 6 hours talking that day. I learned things about my father I'd never known. He loved baseball. He hated olives. He couldn't cook. He had worked as an engineer. He'd remarried eventually, but the marriage ended years ago. He had kept a photograph of me in his wallet. A photograph taken when I was 5. I was sitting on his shoulders at a county fair. I didn't remember the day. He did. Every detail. What I was wearing. What ride I wanted to go on. How I cried when he wouldn't let me eat cotton candy before dinner. I sat there listening to a stranger describe my childhood. And slowly, painfully, he stopped being a stranger. He became my father. I wish the story ended there. It didn't. Because forgiveness isn't as simple as finding out the truth. For months, I was angry at my mother. Then I was angry at my father. Then I was angry at myself. Why hadn't I looked harder? Why had I accepted one version of the story? Why had my father eventually stopped trying? My father answered that question one evening. We were sitting on his porch. I asked him why he'd waited so long. He looked at me. "I thought your mother had one." "One?" He nodded. "She convinced me that you were happier without me." I stared at him. I wasn't. I know that now. There was silence. Then he said, "But Daniel, I need you to understand something." "What?" "Your mother made a terrible decision. But she wasn't a monster." That sentence surprised me. He continued. "She was scared. She was young. She thought she was protecting you. She lied to me." "Yes." "She stole 30 years from us." "Yes." "And you're defending her?" "No." He looked directly at me. "I'm explaining her." That distinction changed something inside me. I didn't suddenly forgive my mother. But I stopped trying to turn her into a villain. She had made a terrible choice. A selfish choice. A fearful choice. But she had also spent the rest of her life loving me. Both things could be true. I kept visiting my father. We slowly built something. It wasn't like the movies. There were no instant father-son adventures. No magical childhood memories. We couldn't get those years back. But we created new memories. Sunday breakfasts. Long phone calls. Occasional arguments. Christmas dinners. Small things. Real things. And 1 year after my mother's death, my father gave me a small box. Inside was the old photograph my mother had once hidden from me. The one I'd seen when I was 17. It was a picture of my parents holding me as a baby. My father looked young. My mother was smiling. I stared at it for a long time. Then I turned it over. On the back, my mother had written something. I'd never seen the handwriting before. It said, "We didn't know how to be parents yet. But we loved him more than anything." I cried. Not because I finally knew the truth. Because I realized my mother had spent 30 years carrying a secret that had slowly become heavier than she could carry. Today, I'm 42. My father is 74. We're still getting to know each other. Sometimes we talk about the years we lost. Sometimes we don't. I don't pretend everything is fixed. It isn't. There are wounds that don't disappear simply because the truth finally comes out. But I learned something I wish I'd understood much earlier. People can love you deeply and still hurt you terribly. My mother loved me. She also lied to me. My father loved me. He also gave up after years of trying. Neither of them was completely innocent. Neither was completely guilty. They were human. And for 30 years, I thought my childhood had been stolen by a father who didn't care. The truth was much more complicated. It was stolen by fear. Fear of losing me. Fear of being alone. Fear of starting over. And by the time everyone realized the damage, decades had passed. If there's one thing I wish I had done differently, it's this. I wish I'd asked more questions while my mother was still healthy enough to answer them. Because sometimes the people who hold the answers to our biggest questions are the same people we're most afraid to question. And sometimes a secret doesn't disappear when someone dies. It simply gets handed to the person who remains. My mother handed hers to me on her deathbed. And for a long time, I thought she had given me another reason to be angry. Eventually, I realized she'd given me something else. The truth. 30 years late. Painful. Incomplete. But still the truth. And sometimes, the truth isn't there to give you back the past. It's there to finally let you stop wondering what happened to it.